Today's episode of The Jai Dave Show is brought to you by the Life Force Academy, the ultimate home Kundalini Yoga experience. Whether you're brand new to Kundalini Yoga or perhaps you're a long-time practitioner, Life Force Academy is an awesome experience. Check it out if you want something that you can use each and every day to have an inspired practice that keeps your body healthy and energized, your mind crystal clear, the heart open, living with a sense of purpose. That's what the Life Force Academy is all about. Anyone can do it from anywhere in the world. It's a really cool experience. Check it out. As a listener of this podcast, you can get a 14-day trial to the Life Force Academy for just $1. 14-day trial for just $1 by going to lifeforce.yoga. Just type that into your browser, lifeforce.yoga, to get a 14-day trial to the Life Force Academy, lifeforce.yoga, to begin your Life Force Academy experience. And now for this episode of the podcast with Cactus, aka Secret Agent 23, Skidoo. Hey everyone, Jai Dave here, and I am so happy to be here with you for this podcast. We've been wanting to do this for a long time, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Jai Dave Show. And I'm super happy that for this first episode, our special guest is Cactus, aka Secret Agent 23 Skidoo, aka the King of Kid Hop. Cactus is someone I've known about for a long time, and now I've known him for some time as well as a friend. And he is a brilliant brother, a beautiful man, a great hip-hop MC. And some of you may or may not know that I am myself am a deep lover of hip-hop music, and have been the majority of my life. But I'm also quite, picky about it. It's hard sometimes to find the stuff that I really like, because not only does it have to have the consciousness, but it can't be cheesy or corny or this way or that way. And I've known about Cactus for a long time. Even when I was younger, I knew of Cactus because he is an incredible MC. He's an incredible poet and lyricist. And he was someone I've known of and respected for a long time. And then more recently, he's become very well known as the Grammy Award-winning Secret Agent 23 Skidoo. He is the king of kid hop. He is kids hip-hop music. And when our son was younger, we would take him to the Secret Agent 23 Skidoo shows, and it was awesome. And he is so brilliant in how he does his art, his music. And this kids hip hop he does, even as an adult, I love it. I dig it. It's not like kids music that adults couldn't also get into, because it's so filled with consciousness, it's so filled with fun, with humor. It's light, but it's also deep. He is great, and his music reflects really just who he is as a person as well. And I don't know if he would refer to himself as this, but I refer to him. He's very much a yogi. He's a person who is on the path of consciousness. He's a person who all the energy of his life is facing in the direction of awakening, and using art as the medium to awaken not only himself, but those who are exposed to his music and to his art. And I was so happy. We could have talked for hours. In fact, we did talk for a couple of hours. So we have made this interview with Cactus into two parts. This is part one, and then you can also download part two, which is available now, both episodes, and you can go ahead and download both of them. And I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. He has an incredible life story. It's full of magic. It's full of really interesting twists and fascinating stories. And we go back and forth and have a great time talking. And I think we'll even do it again, because he's someone I would love to continue having conversations with. We both live in the Nevada City, California area, so I'm lucky enough to live in the same community together. And so here it goes. And really the heart of what this podcast is about, at least initially, and what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk to people whose life is about using all of their life's direction and and what I often refer to as people who have concentrated their life force in a single direction to see what comes out of it. There's some real deep sense of purpose there, and they've taken the majority of the energy of their life and they've moved it in that direction. So for instance, in the case of Cactus, Secret Agent 23 Skidoo, he has used hip-hop music, poetry, and that art form as the canvas to create magic or create consciousness and to create prosperity and to create love in his life. And when an individual is able to concentrate their life force and focus it in a single direction, my experience is that beautiful things occur, wonderful things occur that benefit all of us. And here's a brother who has very much done that and is doing that. He's very inspiring. Again, I think you're going to love this, and that's what the heart of this podcast is going to be all about, is talking to people who are doing just that in their areas of expertise and specialization and artistry. We're going to be talking to musicians, we're going to be talking to yogis, we're going to be talking to herbalists, we're going to be talking to all sorts of different people. My only criteria are people that I find inspiring, people that I'm uplifted by and I'm interested in talking to. And that's what it is to begin the Jai Dave Show. Enjoy this episode with Cactus, Secret Agent 23 Skidoo. Well, how much do you like, so when you're mixing an album, how much do you like listen to an album on
crappy things?
On crappy things,
just as much.
Right?
We listen to it on the best studio speakers.
Right.
We listen to it on mid-grade studio speakers. We listen to it on mid-grade cars. We listen to it on, as much as we hate to do this, laptop speakers.
Laptop speakers. There's no bass in laptop speakers.
No, it's the worst. It's the worst thing ever. But people are going to listen to your music like that.
And so like you got CDs here.
Yeah.
What do you think because do you have a CD player anywhere other than your car nowadays?
I mean, I still have one on my laptop because it's that old. And so I still listen to things through the laptop, through the studio monitors. But not so much. But I mean, I don't know. I think I was having a conversation about this the other day. It's really cool how like no form is ever dead. I know a guy in town here that has a strictly cassette label.
Huh.
Straight up.
Is he making any money?
I mean, he says he sells between 300 and 500 of each release.
Really?
And he's got, lots of releases.
Well, I like to hold stuff in my hand. Like I still I use I have all my books on my iPad, and I love that because I can travel.
I can't do that at all.
You can't do it at all.
No,
I do both.
Travel with huge hardback.
You do.
It's terrible.
I like the. I spend more money, but it's worth it to me. So I'll buy a book like on iBooks.
Yeah. And
I'll buy the hard copy too.
Yeah.
So if I'm traveling, I got it.
I should make that jump, but I'm just like, that's one thing I'm gonna hold out on, is just the analog of that. I mean, I'm totally listening to Spotify and all of that stuff, so I'm not really tripping on that. But like, I don't know, man. Something about the books is just like,
no, for real. I never use a digital book in my home.
Yeah.
But what do you think the future of CD is? Or the album that you can hold in your hand?
Put it this way. The one you're holding in your hands is the answer to that question, because that one glows in the dark.
Infinity plus one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It glows in the dark. The cover and the back do. Mm-hmm. But the back, only certain words and certain letters do, which form a code that direct you to a hidden message on the album itself. That if you find, you email me, and then you get another free album.
Really?
So the answer is, you have to give them a reason
to buy the album.
Yeah.
Yeah, like my wife she's like, right before you walked in, we packed her up, and her and her band, they just took off on their West Coast tour.
Nice.
And she has a new live album, and it's only available right now, hard copy, if you come to the concert.
Okay.
And so we're just trying to, it's like, okay, well maybe that's at least one way to like instead of like pre-digitally release it, pre-hard copy release it. And
that was very sneaky. Yeah, you got to think of them as toys.
Yeah, I love having the album. I like Well, I think you're probably a little older than me, but we come from, at least we're old enough to where we all had
LPs.
albums, LPs. My favorite thing in the world was reading the notes inside of them.
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing too, though, is like that is not what it used to be either, because the whole idea used to be mystery, and now the whole idea is full access.
Right.
So the reason people read the liner notes was because that was the only access they had.
Right.
You would pour over everything, any little weird thing. I mean, look at like the old P-Funk albums that had like the whole comic book inside, and you would analyze every panel of that thing to try to understand what it is that they were saying to you, because they were speaking to you across the galaxy. You know what I mean? They were like on a secret planet, and these were like the only transmissions you were going to get.
Right.
And now it's like people are like, here's my hash brown that I had for breakfast. And you're like, there's no mystique at all, you know?
Right. How do you keep that mystique? Because I think you're one of the better follows on social media.
Thanks, even though I haven't posted for like 3 weeks right now.
Well, I didn't know that, but when you do post, it's usually, I'm not saying it just because that's who's sitting here. I've told your wife that before as well.
I know, she told me that and at the time especially, I was working on that. And I have strategy, and a lot of it is, social media is a beautiful thing for connecting people. Most people use it as a mirror. So to connect to people in any real way, you have to ask, like, okay, if you want to connect to people in some way that's like deep, like you want to make them think, you have to ask a question and then direct it at them.
Right. You do a good job of that.
Yeah. Right. And that's also how you get responses. And then if you get the responses, then the algorithm pushes your next thing up, and then you tell them about the show.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or if you really want to be genius about it, you ask a question that involves the show, but the question's about them.
So it's kind of like the same thing that, in a certain way, same thing that we're getting when I'm sitting at home as a 12-year-old with whatever album I've got, and I can't wait to like open up the cassette and read the inside of it and what they wrote, to somehow get some connection to the musicians'
involvement. Yeah.
It's kind of the same way if it's done well.
No, I agree with that. Yeah. And I think there's a way to do that and still maintain mystique.
Yeah, I think
that's part of the, secret agent thing is like, it's a character. Right. It's I think that's awesome. I think that like to build a persona, and then to have that persona is something you slip into on stage, keep that persona for social media, keep that persona in the studio, and be totally aware of it. Is like, it's a way to become mythic. It's a way to become bigger than just human.
And yet, you're so genuine when you do it.
Thanks.
Like, because if you weren't, I don't think it would work.
No, I think if you only relied on like, so not just a way to become mythic, but like you ever read Joseph Campbell stuff?
Of course.
Okay, so that whole idea of like where dreams meet archetypes meet myth meets legend, right? And the fact that we are that, but then we're also just people,
right?
It's like that's the whole point of, especially being, I think, a vocalist. Like, you become an avatar for everybody who's listening, especially as a storyteller. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. I imagine that instrumentalists feel the same way to a degree, but I also think they can kind of like sublimate themselves in the process more. You can't really do that as like a band leader. So you have to sublimate yourself in something else, which is the connection to myth, the connection to legend.
Like an archetype.
Right.
Yeah. And so in a certain way, because when you're using the word myth, it's not used in terms of disingenuous. It's actually the most genuine in a certain way. It's tapping into reality. Like
fiction speaks truth more sometimes than nonfiction.
Indeed. Yeah.
I know I sound like Trump when I say that.
No, you don't actually. Well, and by the way, I'll introduce you in post-production. I'll let people know who you...
No, I like how it just flows.
Yeah.
That's good.
So where do you start? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in rural southern Indiana.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I see. Rural southern Indiana.
Yeah, Columbus.
Yeah. How far is that from Indianapolis?
It's like 45 minutes straight down the highway.
And Bloomington is where?
It's like 45 minutes west of it. So like if you were to go from one to the other, you pass right through that town. That's kind of like the off point to go to Bloomington.
How rural is where you grew up?
When I grew up, it was interesting because it would be the mentality of a normal, small southern Indiana town. But weirdly, the architecture was amazing. That's like, for some reason, a bunch of different architects decided to just build all this crazy stuff there. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of cool. But mentally, it was still just like, I got out of there quick.
Yeah.
You know?
At what age?
I think the first time I actually ran away was like 16.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was like, grabbed a bus ticket to the West Coast.
Right, you know? Right, because it was going to be so different, right?
Oh, yeah. And it was.
Yes.
You know? I'm definitely one of those people that, and I think this is a pre-internet phenomenon too, where like you feel like there's a whole world out there that you don't have any access to, but that you've heard whispers of it, like through everything from, every song you've ever seen on MTV to like every book you've ever read from like the Beat Poets or like Jim Morrison or like any of it. And you realize that like there are these things happening in like New York City and these things happening in LA and these things happening in San Francisco and New Orleans and stuff. And like, if you could just find a way to get there. And like now people just go, Google New Orleans scene, you know?
I hadn't really thought about that because I definitely had that drive, reading Kerouac.
Where'd you come from?
South Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I first found out about you.
Okay.
Because I don't know how old you are, but I think
I'm 41.
You're 41. So I'm a few years younger than you. Uh-huh. And so when do you arrive in Asheville?
96.
96. So I'm still in South Carolina, and I'm in upstate South Carolina. So I'm just an hour down the road.
Where?
Spartanburg.
Okay,
that's where I grew
right
up.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. So I would skip school and go up to Asheville.
Right.
Yeah.
Just like I would skip school and go to Bloomington.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And so you were on my radar on the periphery, but again, this is still pre-internet, so I couldn't get online. Or if there was online, it wasn't like now. I couldn't find you online.
Yeah.
But there was something about you because at that point I was in love with hip hop.
Right.
And
that's a good time to be in love with hip hop. You're talking about like late 90s.
Yeah, late 90s, because I loved hip hop even as a young person, even, before early 90s. For me, I was still, pretty young and not yet exposed to some of the more, I don't know, I hate to use the terms. How would you describe the golden, era of hip hop, De La?
I think each of those words that you hate to use are worth putting on the table and breaking down.
Well, conscious hip hop or positive hip hop.
Conscious hip hop. I think about this stuff all the time because, and especially back then I did.
Yeah.
I mean, doing what I'm doing now, the parameters of it being family music, it's not difficult to try to figure out how to make that positive.
Right.
You know what I mean? It kind of like comes with the bargain.
Yeah, right.
But back in the day of like, how do you do this? How do you make something conscious and authentic? How do you make something positive and real at the same time? And, that's a question that, so my wife, Brooke, she's a, yoga teacher, especially meditation, herbalism, all that stuff. This is something we talk about all the time because, I think that the quest to try to eradicate negativity from your life often leads people to eradicating half the colors on the canvas, to eradicating half the flavors, to eradicating half the possibilities of the story.
That's it right there. And that's why I hesitate to use the term conscious, because there's so much out there what I think people would call conscious hip hop that I don't like.
Well, ironically, the stuff that people call conscious hip hop, I mean, if you listen to the Roots, if you listen to Tribe Called Quest, if you listen to De La, it's like they don't fit in that box at all.
No.
It's like they were conscious in relation to what was happening with NWA.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? What was happening with like the whole kind of West Coast gangster movement at the time. Like when you come out like not talking about that, then it's like by comparison, you're like, oh, these people are so positive.
Right. Well, to me, I mean, I'm 100% with you on what you're saying there. But
let me put an addendum on that, though.
Yeah.
They definitely were part of a self-aware consciousness movement that was happening.
Yeah.
When you call them conscious, that is completely true.
Yeah.
When people relate consciousness to only positivity, that's where the falsity comes in.
Yeah.
Consciousness means you're aware.
Yes.
Being aware of what's going wrong is exactly the same thing as being aware of like how to make it right. You have to be aware of all the angles and all the situations in order to really do anything. So really the consciousness that they actually represent is something that I think, you know, the people who used to equate consciousness with positivity maybe should have been striving for a little bit more, so as not to create walls between themselves and other worlds, you know?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the Roots, because early 90s, I was listening more to, you know, what was available, Pac, Big.
Yeah, which I love all that too.
Me too.
Yep.
And yet there's a lot of tracks on those albums that nowadays always hit fast forward. You know, I'm a skip just because I just don't want to even listen to it.
You don't want to walk down that alley?
I don't want to go down that alley. But it's not that it's not that it's not good art. It's just that's not what I'm going to vibe with right now anymore in my life. Oh. And yet those albums are still on my iPod, you know.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I realized at one point, you know, because there was always that conversation, a lot of times, especially like cats would come to GFE shows. For those who don't know, GFE was my old band before what I do now. Mm-hmm. Granola Funk Express was the main thing, but also God Force Energy, Grow Food Everywhere, Guinness for Everyone. It goes on. But, you know, they would come to us and be like, oh, it's so good that what you're doing is so positive. And like, not like all those, you know, like I hate Eminem so much. I hate, you know, what Wu-Tang is doing. I hate Biggie, you know, and I'm just like looking at them like, that's all we listen to.
Yeah, we're not going to be we're not going to hang out.
It's not really going to work out, you know. But, you know, and at one point I really realized, I'm like, that thing that people call positivity. Yeah. That thing that is elevating. That thing that is informing. That thing that is like, takes you outside of yourself to become bigger than yourself so that when you come back, the parameters of what you understand have expanded. That can happen with stylistics. That can happen with musicality. That can happen with how people construct their bars. That can happen with how people storytell. I mean, like, what it comes down to is, like, I've heard a lot of so-called positive rap that's just really basic. Yeah. And then I've heard something like Raekwon, and I'm like, I'd much rather listen to that. Likewise. And I think it's more positive. I think it expands me more than hearing somebody say the same tired message in the same tired way.
Well, the artistic sophistication of a Raekwon. Right. You can't even, I mean, most folks can't come close to it, you know.
Most folks can't comprehend it.
Yeah, that's right.
Or even begin to.
That's correct.
I remember when I was young, I was like, I don't know about them. I mean, I'm really like a Method Man guy, you know. And then like it took me years to be like, yeah, you didn't understand it. Right. That's all it was.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. I love that, man. I love that. Yeah, because that's when, all right, I was in college, and when I really think I fell in love with hip-hop, because I always liked hip-hop, you know, but when I like really felt in love and it certainly became, and not using this term loosely, you know, like a devotee, was when I saw the Roots. Yep. It was outside of Vanderbilt University, free show. And it was just like, my thought during that moment was like, all this is just good music. And like, if you're great music, and if you're a lover of great music, you're just like a lover of music, it would be impossible not to appreciate and love what they're doing.
That's right.
And
I still think, to me, I don't really have a top 5, but I do have a top 1, and it's definitely Black Thought.
Is it? Yeah.
100%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just in terms of delivery, in terms of writing, in terms of, I'm a big fan of like near rhymes that aren't that near. Yeah. Like when people can actually twist the word, you know, like I take things very seriously within this industry. Like, you know, it's just, yeah, people who can take words and like mess with them like Play-Doh to make a sculpture out of the same words that nobody else could have done that with. You know?
Yeah. And I can listen, and it's the type of lyricism I'll have to listen to many times before I'm hearing everything he's doing.
And it never gets tired.
Never gets tired. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the quality of great great art.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, we'll get there in a minute though.
Yeah.
But I was going to ask you in regards to your influences. Mm-hmm. So let's take a step back. Go back. So you took off, you were in Southern Indiana. You took off when you were 16. Religious family?
I mean, I will say that part of the reason why I took off is because I was sent to a terrible Lutheran school.
I see.
And was ostracized like from the very beginning, which not only contributed to the giant chip on my shoulder that I brought today. Do you see it? It's very nice. But also to my feelings about religion and my feelings about the institutionalization of things which should be individual. We could get into that. But they were not religious, no. Mm-hmm. Much later, I came back from the road after like, you know, many journeys and conversations and philosophies and all kinds of things, and like had like a 2-hour conversation where I like broke that stuff down to my mom, and she's like, I completely agree.
Really?
And I'm like, then why did you send me to this fucking school, you know?
Yeah.
And she's like, because I didn't know how to make you ask those questions. I was like,
wow.
Checkmate, Mom.
Yeah, no doubt. Wow.
But yeah, okay, so the first tape I had was Run DMC. Second tape I had was Beastie Boys, Let's Tell. I really liked that stuff at that point, you know, but I had no taste necessarily. It's cool that those are the first things that like found me, but before long I also have Vanilla Ice. I also, you know, I had whatever was coming into the stores, you know. And the funny thing was, because of that, I would be like having these things next to each other, listening to them next to each other, and trying to figure out like what is going on here. Like I remember just randomly buying stuff at the store. I had like Public Enemy, Fear of Black Planet, and then I had NWA, the second album, which the name I'm not going to say.
Yeah.
And then I had Poor Righteous Teachers, Pure Poverty. And first of all, I'm amazed that Poor Righteous Teachers found its way to Southern Indiana. But secondly, like listening to all that stuff and trying to figure it out, you know, it's cool because like at the time, it's like, of course I had no syntax for any of that, right? Like how much can you actually understand what's going on in Black America in the, like 1990 in Southern Indiana,
right,
with no internet?
Why do you think we all were so drawn to that? Because I got the chronic taken away from me, like by my friends' parents in like 7th or 8th grade. You know, it's something about all that. We were, you know, these Caucasian kids growing up in.
Well, here's what I think.
Yeah.
I've thought a lot about that too. So what makes art great is that it's primal. So whether that means you're listening to Bob Marley talk about 3 O'Clock Roadblock, or whether that means you're talking about, you know, you're hearing Chuck D talk about the political struggle, or whether that means you're hearing Eazy-E talk about Compton, or whether that means, you know, you're even hearing Jack Kerouac talk about being completely broke and sick and left in Mexico by Neil Cassidy. Yeah. Like, you're dealing with life and death. You're dealing with the type of, like, creation of character that comes of, you know, running up against something that is, like, that immediate. And, you know, being in the suburbs or being in a small town Indiana or whatever, it's like there wasn't a lot of that around. It's like you had your life that you lived in, you had the school that you went to, you had your friends. I mean, we all had like fun times as a kid doing whatever we did, but it's like nothing was that immediate and nothing was that visceral. And I don't think anybody could have said it, but like that's why you love that stuff. That's why you love horror movies. That's why you love rock and roll when it's done correctly. You know, it's like it's powerful because it's a real thing. It's like, you know, it's a thing that you could either end up with $1 million or dead. That's the most interesting thing to a human.
It's genuine.
Well, it's genuine, and it's like, you know, the primal instinct jacked up 100.
Yeah, right.
It's like, I don't know, go listen to that Eazy-E album. Like, you walk away feeling like you just smoked something, you know what I mean? Like that stuff is like, it just jacks up your primal senses so hard. And they knew what they were doing. Yeah. You know, that's on purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. So you take off, you're 15, 16 years old. You go out west. What happened?
So when I was in Bloomington hanging out with kids, like, cutting school or whatever, people had talked to me about rainbow gatherings. Mm-hmm. And, I heard some of the information I heard was true. It's like, oh man, it's just a bunch of people hanging out in the woods and smoking weed and everything is free and like there's girls and like, you can just go there and it's just you're part of this thing, and I was like, amazing. It sounds amazing. And part of the information I heard was completely false. Like, there's one that is happening in Mexico all the time. And and the next one is happening in Colorado like next month. And, so that was part of what made me be like, I'm out, so, or no, Wyoming, it was Wyoming. So I went to Wyoming and, became pretty aware that I was like, well, yeah, there is a rainbow gathering coming here in like 5 months. Do you have anything to do for 5 months or any money at all? And I'm like, no. So I stayed on somebody's couch for like a week or whatever. And then, that even that information didn't like daunt the foolishness in my brain. So I was like, I'm going to go to the one in Mexico then. So, took a Greyhound bus just to Tijuana. Even had the classic, like, stupid greenhorn, Southern Indiana idiot, like, some hippie looking dude, older dude in, I think it was somewhere LA-ish, or no, San Francisco, the bus station. He's like, oh yeah, man, I know all about that gathering. He's like, here's my friend's number. Call him as soon as you get down there. He'll come and pick you up and take you straight to that gathering. By the way, you got any money? And I'm like, yeah, I don't even need money now. Like, you totally hooked me up. Here's like most of my money, So, of course, I get to Tijuana.
That must be crazy, though, coming from Indiana.
Oh, yeah,
and then arriving in San Francisco.
No, arriving in Tijuana. That's the crazy part. But yeah, all of it along the way, for sure. And get to Tijuana, and
oh my gosh,
of course, the phone number doesn't work at all. The town that he says that the gathering is in, he's like, it's right over the border. There's only one town called that, and it's a tiny town in like southern Mexico.
Oh my god!
And also, like, can I swear on here?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, my dumb ass was like, I imagine you go over the border, and then it's kind of this gradual thing where it's like, first of all, everybody speaks English and Spanish, and then the further down you go, it's like they just speak Spanish. I get over to Tijuana, I'm like, nobody speaks English,
Yeah.
At least at that time. And so I'm just like broke in Tijuana, 16-year-old kid, just like having gotten layers of naivety just ripped away, and just like me, like, ooh,
initiation.
I'm in kind of a bad place right now.
Yeah,
initiation, exactly. Rites of passage. So went back over the border, Imperial Beach, slept like in a bush in a public park, hearing just like straight up, just like,
you're back in San Diego area.
Yeah, like southern, right over the border, like just hearing just like, cholo madness going on while I'm sleeping there. And, all of a sudden, all that stuff I'm hearing from NWA or whatever, I'm like, ooh, okay, those are the lowriders with the bass speakers, and I hear them right there. And I'm like, you never imagined who you would be in that story that they were telling.
Right.
You never imagined you as like a 16-year-old, like, dumb white kid. And like, well, now just put them in the middle of that situation of that story they're telling. It's like, I was like, oh man, I stick out like a sore thumb. Like, I'm very robbable right now.
Right.
Except for that I didn't have much,
anything, right.
But so I used to do this trick, right? So I used to call up, this is like just some, I don't know. I wanted to be kind of like, I definitely wanted to be like a scammer when I was young, because I felt like I had a chip on my shoulder against the world. And I felt like if you could get over on somebody, then you kind of like, then you won, And so there was kind of this like little bit of me that was like, oh, you're going to look at me like, you're going to ostracize me like I'm a bad guy, like I'm a criminal? Fine. I'm going to learn to be one, Never went too deep into that. Not as deep as some people I know. But there was definitely a side of me that was like miscreant, So I learned to do this thing where I would call up any fast food place and I would be like, hello, my name is John Fisher. Myself and some of my associates came through today. And frankly, I have never been so flabbergasted by your service. We always come through. My whole corporation always uses you. And this time, 5 full BK meals, all cold. Every one of them. And they say, I'm sorry, sir. We'll replace those. Just come back through. I'm a busy man. I'm going to be sending my son. So then I rolled through. So that was just
wow, that's pretty creative.
This is a trick I had up my butt.
Yeah.
Or a trick I had up my sleeve.
Where was it, dude?
I can't believe
so
I
you
said
pulled that from your you pulled that from your environment of Indiana, like observe. It must have been where it came from, right?
I guess, man. Yeah. I don't know. Just like trying to figure out how to get over you.
Or TV or whatever.
Whatever, yeah. But so basically the next thing I happened, I wake up in Imperial Beach. Now, here's a cool thing. I had this little drum with me, right? I didn't really know how to drum, but like something had just drawn me to like, this is important. And I had some rhythm, you know what I mean? But like didn't know anything traditionally or whatever. So I was like, I don't know what to do, you know? So I went down to the beach and I just started drumming. And this dude comes up, you know, he's got like some terrible weed and some terrible, like, you know, just totally stepped on like swag weed. And he's like, you want to smoke some? So I smoked some weed with him and, you know, we're doing all that. And he's like, man, he's like, you need to go up to Ocean Beach. That's where the hippies are, you know? And I was like, okay. And he's like, you got a place to stay though? And I was like, no. And he's like, all right, come on. You know, I got my family. We're cool. So we come back and, so next thing I know, we're all there smoking this Mexican weed. And like, I show them all how to do it. The fast food trick, you know? It kind of worked. It's like, you have to be able to rock the voice right, you know? But like, I was like, what do you guys want to eat for dinner? You know? And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, literally any place that's fast food. What do you want? And I got like pizza and like McDonald's and like Burger King. Man, huh? Yeah. And they loved it. You know what I mean? So like paid my way that
Everybody's hungry.
Everybody's hungry. And it was like, you know, it was a cool little trick to be able to kind of pass on, I guess. But,
so you got the guy who comes, he points you to Ocean Beach.
Yeah. He's like, if you're Joseph Campbelling here, like
that's where my mind was as I'm listening to
right.
Yeah.
That's like the first, you know, the old wise man or whatever, who's like, go this way, young man.
Yeah.
So
real life.
Yeah, 100%. And like, you know, and I got what I wanted because all of a sudden I'm in a situation where it's like, this is life and death now. I mean, not to say, and you know, this is a statement that definitely needs to be made because without knowing exactly what I was doing, the whole time I was like, I knew I was searching for something more real. So I'm out there and like, you know, now whether it's me in Ocean Beach, you know, being like, I'm on the other side of the country, dead broke, trying to figure my thing out. Or whether it's me later with dreads being like, yo, cops pull me over, so I totally understand what Bob Marley's talking about.
Right.
The truth is, the whole time, I was a white dude that could have made a phone call and gotten, you know, probably a plane ticket home. Yeah. So that does need to be stated.
Sure.
You know, because that's one thing I've learned, you know, dealing with a lot of people who really actually are oppressed, that's like, you know, slumming your way through oppression does teach you things, but don't ever think that it teaches you the actuality of oppression. You know what I mean?
Well said.
Yeah.
How long did it take to figure that out?
Probably 5 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, when I started traveling heavily with like, most of my band is black now. And so like when you have conversations over 10-hour car rides and all of a sudden you realize like, shit, like this is a whole nother world, man.
The Caucasian lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I relate 100%.
Yeah. And how much like that's a blanket that's, you know, actively pulled over your eyes by many, many people. Politics, advertising, you know,
parents.
Yeah.
Who had it pulled over them by their parents, by their parents, by their parents. So it's so thick that the blanket is invisible. Yeah. You know, we don't know it's there until it gets pulled off.
And when it gets pulled off, it hurts so much that like most people just want to pull it back on. You know what I mean?
True.
Yeah. So anyway, so I went to Ocean Beach, and found out that there was a gathering going on like 3 hours away. So I was like, okay, awesome. You know? And like, you know, funny little stories in Ocean Beach, like, you know, so I'm a 16-year-old kid at this point. So, and I really wanted to like, you know, just wanted to drink a beer. Didn't know what beer really was. Didn't really know like what kind of beer, but I was just like, oh, I'm out here on the West Coast, man. I want to smoke weed and drink beer and, you know, do the whole thing. And so I'm walking down the road and I found an ID on the ground, a driver's license that somebody must have thrown out their window that looked a lot like me and was 22. I was like, wow, this is amazing. So bought some beer, drank some beer, and it took me like a few days to figure out, like, okay, why would someone throw their ID out the window? And I was like, oh, I better get rid of this quick.
That's pretty trippy though.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's just another one of those things that when you engage in a mythic journey, like weird stuff happens, right?
I'm going to take a quick break from our conversation to tell you about the Life Force Academy, the presenting sponsor for this podcast. Life Force Academy is the ultimate home Kundalini yoga practice. And as I mentioned, whether you are brand new to Kundalini yoga or you're a longtime practitioner, it's a really cool experience. Whether you want to get up early in the morning and do the energizing wake-up set, or you want to use the meditation for a deep, restful sleep before you go to bed, or you want to use the power practice at the first sign of a cold to stimulate your immune system. Perhaps you want to check out one of our 40-day challenges to have a complete shift and change of the energy in your life, or you want to do a full yoga class where you're going deep into the teachings and also doing the powerful exercises and the blissful meditations. There is something for everyone in the Life Force Academy. You can do it from anywhere in the world. We have members in well over 60 countries around the world. We have a thriving, beautiful community that you can connect with other members on our forum. You can connect with me on our forum. You can ask questions. You can share experiences. If you're looking for a practice that can really help you, no matter who you are, no matter what your ethnicity is, what your religion, or anything like that, none of that is really important. Well, this is for human beings who want to live with good vitality, with clear-mindedness, open-heartedness, live with a sense of real purpose, with a sense of inspiration, mission-oriented living. If you have a mind, you have a mission. And the Life Force Academy is about cultivating the life force conditions for yourself, so whatever it is that you're here to do becomes apparent, and you can move powerfully in that direction and have a sense of real fulfillment in your life. As a listener of this podcast, you can get a 14-day trial for just $1 to the Life Force Academy by going to lifeforce.yoga. Just type that into your browser, lifeforce.yoga, and you can get a 14-day trial for just $1. And if you get in there and you love it, after 14 days, it's just $25 per month. And you can cancel anytime. If you get in there, decide it's not for me, you can cancel anytime. So just go to lifeforce.yoga to begin your 14-day trial of the Life Force Academy. And now back to my conversation with Cactus Secret Agent 23 Skidoo. What do you think kind of activated this story? For instance, do you think the story would be as, I don't know if it felt spectacular as it's happening, but it's, you know, it's pretty...
It felt intense.
Yeah, it felt intense. But in retrospect, you're looking back at it. But it kind of took, do you think it took you bursting out of the kind of bubble you were living in to set it in motion?
Definitely that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, let me take the next step of it, because it'll kind of weave it together in a way that I think is going to make sense for the rest of like what you want to talk about.
Yeah.
All right. So get to Oh My God Hot Springs.
Okay, where is that?
In the Salton Sea.
In the Salton Sea.
The Salton Sea.
Oh my God, hot springs.
Yeah, so the Salton Sea is what used to be an old resort community until the Salton Sea, dried up.
Huh.
So it's like this ghost resort community. But near it, out in the desert,
we're in Southern California.
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
They're like, it's like probably San Diego, and then you go east of San Diego into the desert like 3 hours, something like that. So there is a community of people who live there in like RVs and trailers, and like, you know, some of them are real cool. Some of them are just old hippies that want to be there. And some of them are crazy tweakers, you know, and the further out you get in the desert, the crazier it gets. Yeah. Like the two references I've seen to the Salton Sea and even the Oh My God Hot Springs, in that movie, what's that movie where the dude like runs away and ends up dying in Alaska?
Oh, into the wild? Yeah.
That's one of the places he goes on his journey.
I see.
And I was like watching it and like, oh my God, like, is this movie about me? I hope I don't die in Alaska later. And then there's another terrible movie with Val Kilmer called The Salton Sea. It's like a total tweaker thing.
Okay.
But both of those things are true. Like, it's a beautiful hippie paradise and it's like a weird tweaker world. So anyway, we learned that there was a gathering that was going on there. So we're like, cool. So we hitchhike over there. We get there. Now, this is my first time walking into this thing that I've heard of, rainbow gatherings. Everyone's welcome. Everything's beautiful, right? We walk in. Everybody's looking at us like, these guys. And like, somebody's like, well, fine. Welcome home. And like gives like a very like, you know, half-hearted hug and stuff. And we're just like, dude, like we literally spent we're on our last leg. We thought welcome home was a real thing. Here's what we found out. The gathering ended 3 days ago because the hippies of the Rainbow Gathering were so terrible to that town, just like pooped on the streets and shoplifted and everything, that the local government came, kicked everybody out, and then poured concrete down the hot springs.
Wow.
We're just like, nah, y'all are done. No more attracting hippies here. So then we walk in, you know, long hair and tie-dyes, like, what's up, everybody? You know, and they're like, no. But, so, you know, I walk out into the middle of the desert for a minute, and I'm just like, looking at the sky, and I'm just like, this is like the end for me. Like, this is the I'm on the other side of the world. I am dead broke. I don't even have any food. I haven't eaten today. I got like half a bottle of water left, and I'm in the middle of the desert. And I'm like, if something's going to happen, now is the time. You know what I mean? Make something happen. So
at this point in your mind, in your life, what's your sense of like, of connection to whatever you...
Vague.
Yeah, vague. But are you exploring that?
I mean, I think when my mom said I didn't know how to make you answer those questions.
Yeah.
I think also there's this thing that I come to where I'm like, no matter how much my intellect tries to break this thing down, and believe me, it does, there's a pretty bedrock belief in me that like there is some, you know, I don't know if higher power is the right way to say it, but I don't think it's something you can anthropomorphize. I don't think it's something that you can put a face on necessarily. I think that most attempts to do that are, in my mind, more on the level of art than science. But, you know, there's beautiful attempts. But beyond all of it, like, there's a mystery. There's something ineffable. I don't know if it has a personal interest in me, but I do think you can interact in such a way that, like, if you do heroic actions, then your story does become more mythical.
And it feels personal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you can almost kind of flip to that frequency where you let that kind of thing happen more. I don't think that means there's like a dude with a beard throwing lightning bolts.
Indeed.
But I do think that like you can engage with it in some sense.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah. So that was that moment. And then I walked back to kind of like where the tribe of weirdos with RVs and stuff is. And this huge poodle, like giant poodle that's like, you know, got the poodle cut and everything, starts barking at me, and I'm just like, okay, this is weird. This is a weird next thing to happen.
Like a carved poodle, like a shaved, like
but big.
Really?
Like
we're still at the hot springs place?
Yeah, like we're at the gathering of weirdos.
Right, you would expect more like some raggedy dog. Not
and plus, I've never been scared of a poodle. You know? Right. It was this
your street cred's like going down real quickly, dude.
Like, oh, is that the next thing that happens? It's just insult to injury. Like, haha, you're on the West Coast. Here's a beast poodle. It's gonna eat you. But so then the guy who was the poodle's owner comes out and kind of takes a look at me, and like he's kind of an older hippie, and he just kind of, you know, susses out the situation, and is like, what's happening with you? And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, have you eaten? And I'm like, no. And he's like, come here. You know, so I go in there, he makes dinner. I start looking around. He's got all these ashikos, right? He makes them. Ashikos, you know, African drums. I keep thinking of the people listening like, what's that?
Right. And on that note, I meant to say it when we were talking about it, because we were talking about I'm not going to steer us away from the story.
Sure.
We were talking about Black Thought.
Yeah.
It's like you and I, it's like, oh, most of the people listening to this are going to know him from Jimmy Fallon. He's the
true.
MC on the band The Roots and Jimmy Fallon. Anyway,
Also the illest MC that ever happened.
and how many people realize that?
Hopefully, when he does the freestyles on Jimmy Fallon, they know what they're getting. But
Yeah, I love him on the show, but
but it is funny.
It's funny.
It is funny.
Anyway, circling back around.
So I'm looking around at these drums, and I'm just like, wow. And he can tell that I'm like interested. And he's like, "You play?" And I'm like, "I don't know, a little bit, And so then we start playing. And, it's crazy because, Ashikos are beautiful. They have this beautiful tone, whereas a djembe has, like, a nice bass tone. It's like Ashikos have this thing that just, like, the bass just keeps going.
They're straight down, right?
Yeah, it sounds like an 808. It's like, And in the desert, they're so dry that it's even more like that. So we start playing. Next thing I know, somebody, like, peeks his head in and is like, should I do it? And the guy's like, And I was like, what was that, So next thing I know, this thing that was previously probably like 10 or 12 RVs with like sparsely populated, nobody there. We come out at night. Now there's a raging bonfire with like 30 people with drums. And we play, and I'll play it all night. And I was just like, oh my God. And, in the morning I was like, look, I'm kind of like, on my last leg here. And this might sound like a desperate thing to say, but I really do mean it. I want to stay here, and I want to learn how to make these drums. And he's like, well, we'll give it a week and see if you still feel that way. Yeah. And I did. And I stayed there, and I learned to make those drums.
Really?
And I think that, like, the fact of I had this little weird drum that I went to Imperial Beach and just bang, 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 bang. Next thing I know, I'm playing Ashikos and making them in the middle of the desert. That totally eventually led to me freestyling because I learned how to, like, play and freestyle at the same time, which led to everything else.
Prior to that point, making the drums, learning to freestyle, were you even experimenting with rhyming?
No.
Not at all?
No. I loved hip-hop, but like...
Other than just kind of like imagining,
Not me as that, though.
Yeah, right.
Just like, I loved it as a form, but like, it'd be the same way as like you look at a bird.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, it's cool to watch it fly. Like, you never imagined that you could do it.
I wanted to ask you about that freestyling. That's something I've always admired, and never gone down that road and actually attempting to cultivate it as a skill.
Yeah.
What I want to ask you is how much of it is a learned skill, and how much of it was a natural talent. At least for you. Because it's got to be like most everything else. There's some people who just seem to have the gift.
I think it's like, all right, so GFE, back when we started, we had shirts that said freestyle's a lifestyle. And I think that's kind of the answer to the question is like the degree to which you will do that with everything else is the degree to which you will probably be good at doing it lyrically. You know what I mean? Like at that point we were like, what is freestyle except jumping on a bus to go to Tijuana for no reason?
Right.
What is freestyle except for going, I just met you, will you teach me to make drums? You know what I mean? And like, it's kind of like an improvised life lends itself to being able to do that lyrically. But having said that, of course, when you see somebody rapping, they're crazy good. It's like, yeah, well, they've built up those word sounds. Like everybody has this ammo, like, what rhymes with, ammo. You know that camel rhymes with ammo, you know what I'm saying? And then like after a while you have a whole big, thick, chunk of those. And then if you keep rapping, you understand near rhymes all of a sudden. And then you understand, oh, wow, camel can rhyme with this, panel or something like that. And like now the chunks fit together. And then it gets to a point where like, you can't really fall off because everything rhymes.
I love that because there's one aspect, freestyle, okay, as a lyrical art form within the context of hip hop. You guys took it to a bigger context. Freestyle is a lifestyle. And that brings it, what do we want to say, spiritualizes it even deeper, or what was the word? Mythologizes it, or whatever, however the semantic would be. Because then, and that brings us back into, okay, what is the relationship with whatever it is that is animating this entire existence?
Right.
And you're as a lifestyle making yourself some sort of a vehicle for that.
Vessel, yeah.
And so that even makes it more interesting to me, at least in terms of a lifestyle.
That's a fun thing too, because when you build up the ammo, you know, and when you build up, a lot of times, you know, you can either build up word sounds, or a lot of times people build up punchlines, or they build up, you know, 2 bars that go like this, and then they have like kind of a cut and paste technique where it's like these 2 bars and these 2 bars and these 2 bars, and then like maybe a little bit of it will be really improvised, but a lot of times it's more of an improvised, you know, mosaic forming. But a lot of times I would experiment with like, you know, literally like being the vessel thing, where I'm like, okay, I know I have the word sounds, but I'm not going to think. I'm just going to start doing it. And then like, and it's amazing watching that come together, because you'll say stuff way smarter than anything you could write.
Yeah.
You know, I definitely know that like I've taken the time to learn how to write. I've taken the time to learn, you know, my rituals on getting in the zone to write, and how to challenge myself to fit it within certain parameters and stuff. I still think that like the best stuff I've ever said was improvised and not recorded and cannot be accessed again.
Yeah.
You know?
That's why I never plan when I'm teaching. I make a point of, I've learned to over the years to never, the more I plan, the less I like it.
Yeah.
You know, that's not always the case, but it's most often the case.
Yeah.
So
I started doing rhyme writing classes, and it's exactly what I do. It's like, I just walk in and see what happens, because, you know, what are you going to make them conform?
Right.
You know,
Right.
This is, especially if you're talking about hip hop.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of antithetical to the whole thing.
Right.
You know?
Wow. Because I remember watching, you know, that documentary Freestyle, The Art of Rhyme.
Yeah, that's one of the Q3 things.
I think so. I don't know.
It's Quincy Jones's son.
Oh, yeah.
He's got the Q3 Entertainment.
Right.
He does like all those. And if you watch a bunch, it's like the same interviews where he splices differently into like the battle ones, and then the freestyle ones, and then the art of writing 16 bars.
Okay, yeah. With KRS-One and
they're
so
all
forth.
worth watching. Though.
Yeah. Well, there was one, they found Supernat. Supernatural is this, you know, iconic freestyle rapper.
Yep.
And he was like, his rhyme and dictionary.
Yeah.
It seemed like a Bible to him. Like he's just always kept a rhyme and dictionary.
Nice. Yeah.
Did you ever do anything like that?
I always consider that cheating, but recently I've gotten into it.
Yeah.
Like, because I think what it comes down to is like, if you're just beginning, I don't know if you should do that.
Right.
Because I think that like working out certain muscles of being able to find those things on your own is good.
Right.
But I think that like, if you already know, like, yeah, I can come up with 15 words for that. Is there anything I'm missing? You know?
That's wise. So can you teach somebody this art?
What, freestyling?
Yeah.
It's harder. I can teach rhyme writing a lot better than I can teach freestyling. You know, it's, and they're kind of similar, but they're kind of not. Like,
I wonder if you could teach it, but if it had to be more like a, you know, like a master would teach like a student in terms of like a yogi. Like there's certain things you cannot teach directly,
right?
You know, but you can only teach through life. Like you just like, no, you don't
Right.
get this rhyming dictionary yet.
Like I think letting go is part of it. So it's like, you know, like put it this way. I know, you know, as a rapper, you always end up with other people and just like start freestyling, like even people who don't freestyle. And then like you watch people try to jump in and do it. And it's like, you could almost, or at this point, I could almost tell you off the bat, like who could do it and who couldn't. You know, it's kind of like, how much do you self-edit? How big is your filter? Like, how much do you have to know what you're going to say before you say it? How much do you know, how much you care about like what the people around you think about you, and how small is the box that you will let them see of you? You know?
You can see it on their face. You can hear it in the words. You can feel it in the vibration of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the answer to that, yeah, you could teach somebody. I'm sure it would probably take longer than it would teach them, you know, than to teach them how to write a rhyme. Because writing rhymes like really, you know, formulaic. Like you can be like, you do this. Like I have it broken down into a system now that I go teach kids. And it's like, you know, first do this, then do this. And the great thing is you just got to get them over the hump of like, I can't do that. And then you're like, well, okay, you can't write a rhyme in your head. Can you come up with something that rhymes with the word nice? Yeah, you know, okay, no, I can't. Okay, well, check it out. Here's the alphabet. If you just go down the alphabet from the beginning to the end, A, B, C, D, if you go ice, bice, kais, dice, are any of those words? Yeah, dice is a word. Okay, now you got a word.
Yeah.
Now, you know, and like just step by step, then all of a sudden these kids do it. You know, so that stuff's a lot more formulaic. Freestyling.
You're teaching that like when you're touring. You're also doing workshops.
Yeah,
that's dope.
It's really fun.
Yeah,
I didn't think like that wasn't from me coming up with it. It was like my booking agent's like, "Yo, we could probably get you more gigs if you taught workshops." And I'm like, "I'm not a teacher.
Yeah,
I'm a performer." You know. And she's like, "Well, do you think okay? These people are offering this. Can you try to do something?" And I was like, "Okay." So I did it, and then I was like, "That was really fun." But it still took me a while to be like, "I want to do this."
Right.
You know, because it's different.
Yeah.
It's very different. Mm-hmm. You know, it's different dealing with kids one-on-one. It's a different muscle to have that kind of patience. You know, it's like,
kids.
I'm still sometimes with certain kids, like, and that's the place where I'm a bad teacher, is that if there's 15 kids there and 10 of them are just super into it and 5 of them are like looking at their phones and like doodling, I'll be like, all right, looks like 10 people are learning today. Have fun doodling. You know, like, I'm not going to go to them and spend extra time and be like, oh, come on, man. You know, like, right. I'll be like, hey, if you're not into it, you're not into it, you know. Not everybody here is going to be a rapper at the end of the day, and apparently you chose it you didn't want to be, so peace. You know?
Right. What? So, all right. So you making drums now?
Yeah, back then, yeah.
All right. What happens?
So what does happen?
How does it lead to? All right. Okay, so you start rhyming a little bit. So how does that progress?
Okay. So through dealing with this dude who, believe it or not, his name is Tugboat Willie.
I do believe that.
Yeah. That's Rainbow World.
Yeah.
He actually took me to my first real rainbow gathering.
Okay.
That was 94 Florida Regional. Mm-hmm. And so through that, I came into the, checking out what was really happening in an actual rainbow gathering with the kitchens and everything like that. And that's when I met up with the kitchen that is Granola Funk Express.
It was a rainbow kitchen?
That's what, and still is. Uh-huh. Like what we do, I would almost say they, because I haven't been there in so long that I don't feel like I can claim it like that.
Are they still doing it?
Yeah.
At rainbow gatherings?
So what it is, I mean, for people who don't know, rainbow gatherings are these amazing gatherings in the woods of sometimes up to like 20,000 people. Everybody comes, everything is free. You can't even use money. Everybody gets fed, and what it is that there's different things called kitchens that specialize in different things. So there'd be like, a pizza kitchen that just does pizzas, and there's a kitchen that's vegan over here that just does that, and all these different kind of like subgroups. It's like Burning Man in that sense, I suppose, where you kind of have these like tribes of people that specialize in a certain thing, right? Mm-hmm. So Granola Funk Express built a theater every year. Really? And, started small, ended up like amazingly big. There's this dude, Aaron Funk, who just got really into it. And he would come with like, sheets of like white cloth and everything and build like 2-3 story, shaped like a pirate ship sometimes, like, and all this with no electricity, no, nailing into trees, no anything, and you also can't cut down trees. So you're dealing with only trees that have already fallen and rope.
What's there already?
Right, because when you leave, it has to be the same as when you came.
Wow.
So that was Granola Funk Express's thing, is that we're the theater, and everybody can come be on stage. But
I didn't realize y'all were born out of the rainbow.
Yeah, 100%.
Uh-huh.
So
that makes a lot of sense. It explains a lot.
It does.
Yeah.
And, another thing is, in the woods, like at that time, there were no phones, no smartphones, so there was no entertainment at all. And so people were starved for entertainment. So the fact that we could play drums and freestyle meant a lot. And that was like really where we cut our teeth, because we had a very open audience ready at any time. Like if we could just walk around, drumming, freestyling about whatever's going on, working on whatever we were like maybe trying to write or whatever. People loved it, and people would give us food for that. People would give us chocolate for that. People would smoke us out with weed for that. And we're just like, this is great. Like to me, that was almost like the perfect, basic metaphor for like what I wanted life to be like. I'm like, I just want to come up with raps, and then I want you to give me food for that, and I want you to smoke me out for that, and girls like me now because I'm rapping.
Yeah,
like,
of course they do.
And I was like, I mean, the bug bit me. I was like, this is life.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna let go of it. I really want this to happen.
Yeah, and I bet you were pretty good from the get go, though.
I'm bold.
Yeah,
that's the main thing. Is just like,
you have to be courageous to freestyle.
And you have to be enthusiastic. Like, I really like the things that I really like. And so I think
that
that's
still comes out in your
contagious.
social media posts. You
Right.
know? Like, it's the same, it must be the same personality there.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I was younger and dumber and bolder.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, that's how it is like, I think boldness, you know, fortune favors the bold and all that. Like, it's very true. I'm really glad that I had that as a kid. I look back and I'm like, God, I really put myself in situations where, like, I'm glad I beat the odds as many times as I did, because I could have been dead. I could have been in prison. I could have been in, you know, I definitely could have gotten the wrong girl pregnant.
Yeah.
I definitely have had moments in my life where I'm like, whoa, like, you dropped out of school I never finished my sophomore year. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I really painted myself into a corner with this thing.
Isn't it crazy looking back at like how you don't realize it when it's happening, but how much of a tightrope it's in retrospect, it seems like
Yes.
there's something else going on there, you know, that I think is holding you in some sort of, you know, manner.
It is. And it's something that I constantly struggle with, because like intellect wants to put everything in the correct box.
Yeah.
And that thing that you're talking about, that mystery, the ineffable, like, and all the things that associate with it, like whether that's religion, mysticism, a lot of the healing arts, the inspiration of artists, you know, all of that stuff is like, I don't know, I'm really wary of it, because as much as like I obviously engaged in my own form of it while going on the road and being protected in those ways and engaging with like being in that frequency, it's like I always have that chip on my shoulder of like, and if you exploit that in the wrong way, you end up like this Lutheran school that raised you, that just wants to take somebody different and ostracize them. So, you know, that's a fine line too. I've been thinking about that a lot lately, about like magical thinking versus rational thinking. In what ratio do you use them correctly? And, you know, when is it the right time for the right thing? Because I think magical thinking will give you short-term happiness. Rational thinking will give you long-term happiness. But then magical thinking will give you extra long-term happiness. But like, you kind of have to use them like tools at the right time. Like when it's time to pay rent, rational thinking.
Yeah.
When it's time to make art, magical thinking.
Yeah.
When it's time to be in love, magical thinking. When it's time to like figure out if this is the right person to be in love with, rational thinking, you know.
That's beautiful, man. I love that. Yeah. That's a keeper.
Yeah.
It's good semantics too.
I got a quote by Tom Robbins on my wall right next to my desk where I write. It says, logic gives a man what he needs. Magic gives a man what he wants. I think that's really well put.
That's wise.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. Love it. So, okay. So out of Rainbow, I've never been to a Rainbow gathering, but my first yoga teacher who introduced me to yoga is like right out of the Rainbow gatherings. Yeah. He's a much older guy than me. He's from Tennessee, but he had like his turban on but not real clean, like a patch of hair sticking out the side, you know, and well, he's a beautiful, beautiful person.
Yeah, Rainbow's not known for being real clean.
And his name was Dudham, and that's his thing still to this day. Is he goes to Rainbow and he has his Kundalini camp, you know, you probably cross paths with him at some point.
Probably so.
And there's been more people that I think, because now in our in the Kundalini yoga community, you know, people have come from everywhere, but I think I probably met more people who were introduced to it from him somehow, you know, Rainbow gatherings at this. And a lot of people just don't even know him and know of him or anything, but he's this guy, and that's what he does. He goes to Rainbow camp. He has his camp, and he's just like genuine. And so I've never been to Rainbow, but it's influenced me in many directions. And
that thing you're talking about, that sort of like, you know, not in a cold way, but it as a promotional tool is amazing. Because especially back in the day when there wasn't as much interconnectivity through internet, and when people didn't just kind of sit there and make the mountain come to them, but they had to go to it. Yeah. Like in the mid 90s, there was also this traveling scene that went with that. So once we got into that, you know, we were part of Rainbow gatherings, and we were part of going to dead shows and fish shows, not really to go into the show, but because of the parking lot. Yeah. You know, it was like this traveling gypsy scene. And, you know, the parking lot of those things were this sort of, you know, mirror image of Rainbow in a way, except for where in Rainbow you would learn how to do everything with the idea of consumerism removed. You know, it was kind of like this metaphorical basic thing of like, well, how do I put in work? Well, how do I find my place? Well, how do I find my identity? Well, how do I navigate these different camps of people? You know what I'm saying? Well, how do I, figure out how to not be offended by things like other people's beliefs or nudity? You know what I'm saying? How do I really understand nature? Then like the dead lot, fish lot thing was like, okay, now how do I take that love that I've learned and try to figure out how to use that in a consumeristic world?
Be entrepreneurial.
Right. And so we bounced back and forth between those worlds a lot. And between that, there was like the hitchhiking of it, the train hopping of it, the, traveling in like converted school buses and everything. Mm-hmm. And these were all the same people that were doing these things. So by the time GFE decided that we actually wanted to root down and become a band, which we did in Nashville in 96, and we're like, okay, well, if we're going to be a band.
And there's a lot of people in that band.
Yeah, at the inception, I think there was like 10.
Yeah, now that makes more sense.
Right.
Now that I know your backstory, because I was looking at that, I was like, God, there's a lot of people in that band.
Right, because before that, it was like we would all be at rainbow gatherings, and then like over drums, we'd be freestyling. Mm-hmm. And then we would, when doing that in a consumeristic way, we would do that same thing on the lot. And then we would also do that on the different travel towns in between, right? So there used to be these nodes of like Boulder, Colorado, actually 5 towns that were built by the same architect that all have pedestrian malls in the middle of them. Boulder, Colorado, Burlington, Vermont, Iowa City, Eugene, and I can't remember the 5th one. But all of those were nodes, which is interesting. And then there were other travel cities too, but like, these were places where, like, Boulder back in the day, you go to the pedestrian mall, there would just be hundreds and hundreds of just like, hippies of the type of just like, road dogs. Mm-hmm. And so we were deeply part of that scene, and we would go to those places. Those were also some of the biggest street performance meccas. So like, we'd go to Boulder, I'd be sleeping on a rooftop, somebody else is sleeping on somebody's couch. We would assemble, in the morning at like 10 or whatever. There'd be like 10 of us. We'd play the hand drum, freestyle. If people are going by, we would make enough money for all of us to go eat lunch, come back, do it again, go eat dinner, and like that was the lifestyle. So then when we decided, okay, we're going to move to North Carolina, and we're like, well, if we're going to be a band, we're going to need things like instruments and actual songs,
Yeah.
And so we decided to do it. And then the cool thing was, once we had our first tours where we played like East Coast tour, first East Coast tour, sold it out. First West Coast tour, sold it out. Didn't even have more than 3 songs.
Right out the gate?
Because of this traveling thing.
Right.
So I'm saying, like, there were enough kids in these travel towns that knew us from
Rainbow,
Dead Lot, Fish Lot, Rainbow, travel towns, all that stuff, that they're like, oh, these guys. Mm-hmm. So like
cult following.
Yeah, before we even had like more than 3 songs, like,
because y'all got pretty like you had some.
We had a good time.
Yeah, and people knew about you.
People knew about
I
us.
remember.
Yeah,
I knew about y'all.
We traveled in a tour bus.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah, at one point, like at the height of it.
At the height, how many people are coming to those shows?
I mean, steadily 200, 300, 400. Which isn't huge, but like, it's awesome.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
It's a party.
I think it got as big as it could have, kind of. Like, at one point we were bemoaning, like, oh, if we only had known more about promotion, or if we'd known more about, like, how to advertise correctly, or if we'd, like, aligned with the right label. And like one of them was like, well, you know what I think? We were a band of 10 white, hippie, political, psychedelic rappers. I think we probably got as far as we could have got.
You
with
hit the max.
It's like, maybe you're right.
You might be right. Yeah.
Yeah,
man. That concludes part number 1 of my conversation with Cactus. If you enjoyed this one, you'll really love part number 2. It gets really funny, really interesting. He's such a cool brother. So enjoy part 2. It's available now for download or for listening wherever you're getting your podcasts. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast. If you would, please leave us a rating and a review. Give us an honest review and give us an honest rating. We'd love that and appreciate it very much. It will help us get this thing rolling to more and more people. Thanks so much for listening, and enjoy part number 2 with Cactus.